ITA, for refusing to let my brother's pregnant wife come to my wedding after forcing her to pay for her own things to travel here. My brother, Kaz 30M, and I, 25F, were very close growing up. We had a rough childhood and worked through it all together. He was my best friend. When I was 19, I started dating my now husband. A few months later, a close family friend of ours was getting married, and we had been invited to the wedding. There were to strictly be no plus ones. When I arrived, Kaz showed up with Becca. She then proceeded to complain the entire night. Later on, funnily enough, just as the newlyweds were about to cut the cake, Becca stood up and took the microphone they had used for speeches earlier, and out of nowhere, announced her and Kaz's engagement a few weeks prior. Everyone at the wedding, even Kaz himself, was mortified at what she did. The bride was enraged and kicked her out of the wedding immediately. Fast forward 6 years later, me and my husband are planning our wedding. I hadn't seen Becca in around for years, and to my knowledge, her and my brother were living happily together. For good reason. I initially refused to allow her to come to the wedding and got in a huge argument over it with my brother, which resulted in him saying he wasn't going to attend at all, even after I caved and said she could come. For the first time ever, I felt abandoned by my brother. I was devastated. Due to my dad's passing 2 years prior, I had wanted Kaz to be the one to walk me down the aisle, but now he was refusing to come to the wedding altogether. I begged him for weeks to change his mind, and he eventually gave in. Becca had insisted we paid for their flights as they lived across the world now, but I was splashing out on my wedding, so I couldn't afford to pay for all their travel too. They then agreed to pay for it themselves, which was undoubtedly expensive for them, I admit. Fast forward to the day before the wedding, they had ended up staying in my parents' house, as this was also where all the prep was happening for the night before. I was putting some random things in their room to preserve for the next day. As I was moving things around to make room, I moved Becca's bag out the way, accidentally knocking it on the floor, but a piece of loose paper ended up falling out, and I decided to pick it up. Admittedly, I shouldn't have read it, as it wasn't mine, but I decided to read it over briefly. As I read it, I realized it was a speech Becca had prepared to do. It was her announcing her pregnancy. I immediately freaked out and pulled Kaz aside, telling him there was no way he could let her do this and begged him to talk to her. But he said it was really important to her and refused to, so I talked to her myself. She instantly blew up and started screaming at me, accusing me of being jealous of her, hoping her child D3S, and etc. I told her she was crazy and she should pack her bags and said she couldn't come to the wedding, kicking her and my brother out the house instantly. Neither attended the wedding and I haven't heard from them since. Ida?